A desperate rescue. The cold darkness of space wrapped around Jack Rains like a death shroud. His ship, the Odyssey, floated in pieces, debris scattered across the endless void. Oxygen was running low. His breathing echoed inside his helmet, sharp, shallow gasps. He stared at the cracked display on his wrist, watching the numbers count down. 15 minutes of oxygen left. Jack tried to keep calm, but fear clawed at his chest. He was alone, drifting in enemy territory. The Drakari, a hostile alien race, had ambushed his fleet. His crew was gone, his ship destroyed, and rescue was impossible. The nearest human outpost was days away, and Jack didn't have hours, let alone days. 10 minutes of oxygen left. His vision blurred as panic set in. He could already feel the cold creeping into his bones. This was it. This was how it ended, not in a blaze of glory, but suffocating in the middle of nowhere forgotten. Suddenly, a shadow moved across the stars. Jack's heart skipped a beat. A ship, but not human. The vessel was sleek, with sharp angles and glowing blue lines running along its hull. It moved like a predator, silent and fast. Jack's hope faded as quickly as it had come. The Xilari, another alien species, known for their strict laws and cold hearts. They didn't interfere in human affairs. They didn't save strangers. If anything, they might finish what the Drakari started. Jack closed his eyes, accepting his fate. But then, something strange happened. The alien ship slowed down. It hovered above him, its engines humming softly. A beam of light shot out, wrapping around Jack's body. He felt himself being pulled toward the ship, weightless and powerless. What the hell? The world went dark. When Jack opened his eyes, the first thing he noticed was the alien ceiling above him. Smooth metal with glowing symbols that pulsed like a heartbeat. The air smelled different, clean but sharp. He tried to sit up, but his body felt heavy. Then he heard footsteps. A tall figure stepped into the room. Its skin was a pale blue, and its eyes glowed like molten silver. It wore a sleek uniform with strange markings on the chest. But what caught Jack's attention was the expression on its face. Not anger or indifference, but curiosity. "I see you are awake," the alien said in perfect English, though its voice had a strange, echoing quality. Jack's throat was dry, but he forced himself to speak. "Where am I?" "You are aboard my ship, the Varan," the alien replied. "I am Captain Varak of the Xilari." Jack stared, trying to process the information. "Why did you save me?" Varak's eyes flickered with something Jack couldn't quite read. Regret. Pity. You were dying. It was the logical choice. Logical? Jack thought bitterly. Saving the human in enemy space was anything but logical. Before Jack could respond, the door hissed open, and another alien stormed in. This one looked furious, its skin a darker shade of blue, and its eyes burning like fire. "Varak," the newcomer snarled. "You brought a human aboard. Do you have any idea what you've done? This is treason." Varak didn't flinch. He would have died. He should have died. The alien snapped. "The Council forbids contact with humans. You've broken our laws." Jack's heart pounded. Treason. What the hell was going on? He wasn't just in danger from alien enemies. He was now trapped on a ship where even the crew wanted him dead. Varak turned to Jack, his face calm but his eyes hard. "You are safe for now, but you cannot stay here. If the Council finds out, they will execute us both." Jack's mind raced. Then why save me at all? Varak was silent for a moment, then spoke in a low voice. "Because sometimes the right thing is not the lawful thing." Before Jack could reply, the ship's alarms blared. Red lights flashed, and a robotic voice echoed through the walls in an alien language. Varak's face darkened. "The Drakari have found us. They are preparing to attack." Jack's blood ran cold. "We have to get out of here." Varak nodded. "Agreed. But if we run, We'll be hunted by more than just the Drakari. My people will see me as a traitor." Jack met Varek's eyes. "Then why don't you just hand me over? Save yourself." Varek's lips curled into something almost like a smile. "Because our destinies are linked now, human. Whether we like it or not." The ship shook violently as the first blasts hit. Jack could feel the tension in the air. He didn't know this alien, didn't trust him. But right now, Varek was his only chance of survival. And maybe he was Varek's only chance too. As they ran toward the bridge, Jack realized this was no ordinary rescue. This was the beginning of something bigger, something neither of them could escape. Their fates were now bound by an unbreakable destiny. Betrayal among the stars. The Varian streaked through the black void of space, its engines humming softly as it slipped past the outer fringes of the Drakari hunting zones. The stars outside the viewport stretched into long, thin lines as the ship entered faster than light travel. But inside, the atmosphere was anything but calm. Jack Rains sat in the corner of a dimly lit room, his back against the cold metal wall. The alien technology surrounding him was sleek and advanced, far beyond anything humans had developed. But none of that mattered. He was trapped on an alien ship, far from home, and every instinct screamed that he wasn't safe. He could still hear the angry words from Varek's crew. They didn't trust him. And honestly, Jack didn't trust them either. The Xilari were known to be cold and calculating, their loyalty tied to strict laws and ancient codes. And Varek had broken those laws the moment he pulled Jack from the wreckage of his ship. But why? Why risk everything for a human stranger? Jack's thoughts were interrupted by the hiss of the door sliding open. Varek stepped inside, his tall frame casting a long shadow across the room. His silver eyes studied Jack with that same unreadable expression. "You've been quiet," Varek said, his voice calm but carrying an edge of something Jack couldn't place. "Regret, maybe. Or caution." Jack snorted. "What do you expect? I'm stuck on an alien ship with people who want me dead." Varek didn't argue. Instead, he stepped closer, his gaze never leaving Jack's face. "I didn't save you to harm you, human. But we're both in danger now." Jack stood up, his muscles tense. "Yeah, I figured that out when your crew called you a traitor." Varek's eyes darkened. "They don't understand. The Xilari Empire fears humanity more than it admits. You're unpredictable, dangerous." Jack laughed bitterly. "Yeah, we're real scary floating around in broken ships." Varek didn't smile. "You joke, but you don't realize your species' potential. The Xilari know what humans can become. That's why they keep you at arm's length. That's why they'd rather see you dead." Jack felt a chill run down his spine. There was something in Varek's voice, something that told him this wasn't just about politics or alien laws. This was personal. Before Jack could respond, the ship jolted violently, throwing him against the wall. Alarms blared, and the lights flickered. Varek cursed in his native tongue and tapped a communicator on his wrist. "Report." A distorted voice crackled through. "Captain, we've been followed. It's one of ours." Varek's face tightened. "What?" The voice hesitated. "It's the Zarkin. They know you have the human. They've ordered us to surrender or be destroyed." Jack's heart pounded. "They're your people. They wouldn't fire on you, would they?" Varek's jaw clenched. "They will. The Xilari Empire doesn't forgive betrayal." The ship rocked again, harder this time. Varek grabbed Jack by the arm, pulling him toward the door. "We need to get to the bridge. Now." They sprinted through the narrow corridors of the Varian, the walls vibrating with the impact of energy blasts. Jack's mind raced as fast as his feet. How had everything gone so wrong so fast? 1 minute, he was dying in space, and now he was being hunted by an alien empire alongside a captain who'd risked everything to save him. But why? What did Varek see in him that was worth this much trouble? They burst onto the bridge, where chaos reigned. Varek's crew barked orders and frantically worked the controls, but the tension in the air was thick enough to cut. Jack could feel their eyes on him, resentful, distrustful, and afraid. "Status," Varek barked as he took his seat at the command console. A young Silari officer turned, his face pale. "The Zarkin is locking weapons. They've given us 10 minutes to surrender." Varek's hands tightened around the armrests of his chair, prepared to jump to hyperspace. The officer hesitated. "Captain, if we run, we'll be fugitives. We'll be hunted for the rest of our lives." Varek's eyes flicked toward Jack for just a moment before returning to the screen. "We already are." The crew exchanged glances, their loyalty stretched to the breaking point. Jack could feel it in the air, the tension, the doubt. At any moment, they might turn on Varek. And on him. Suddenly, Jack noticed something. One of the crew members, a tall Xilari with dark blue skin and sharp features, was moving toward the communication console, too casually, too quietly. Jack's instincts kicked in. Varek. He's sending a signal. Varek spun around just as the crew member pressed a glowing button. The ship's lights dimmed for a moment, and a soft peep echoed through the bridge. "It's done," the traitor sneered. "The Zarkin knows exactly where we are. You can't run now." Without hesitation, Varek drew a sleek alien weapon from his belt and fired. The traitor collapsed, his body hitting the floor with a dull thud. The bridge fell silent. Varek turned back to the crew, his voice cold and steady. "Anyone else feeling disloyal today?" No one spoke. Jack stared at the body, his mind racing. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was war. Varek met Jack's gaze. "We don't have much time. The Zarkin will be here any second." Jack took a deep breath. "Then let's get out of here." Varek nodded, his silver eyes gleaming with determination. "Hold on, human. This is going to get rough." The ship lurched as the engines roared to life, and the Varian shot into hyperspace, leaving the betrayal and the life Jack once knew behind. But as they hurtled through the stars, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The Xilari Empire wouldn't stop. The Drakari wouldn't forget. And whatever unbreakable destiny linked him to Varek, it was only just starting to unfold. The escape and the oath. The Varian tore through hyperspace like a wounded beast fleeing a hunter. The ship's systems groaned under the strain, the metal creaking as if it, too, understood the weight of their situation. The Xilari Empire had branded them traitors. The Drakari still lurked in the shadows, waiting for an opportunity to strike. And now, Jack Rains, a lone human pilot, found himself entangled in a cosmic game far bigger than he ever could have imagined. Jack leaned against the cold metal wall of the bridge, his breath still ragged from the chaos that had unfolded moments ago. His gaze flickered to Varek, the Xilari captain who had risked everything to save him. The alien stood tall, his silver eyes scanning the control panels with unreadable focus. Jack couldn't shake the question that burned inside him. "Why did you really save me, Varek?" His voice was low, but firm. Varek turned his gaze toward Jack, and for the first time, there was something in his expression, not just calculation, but something deeper, a conflict within. "The moment I saw you drifting in space, I felt something I had never felt before," Varek admitted. "A decision made not by logic, but by something stronger." Jack frowned. "What do you mean?" Varek exhaled, a sound that almost resembled a human sigh. "There is an ancient Xilari belief, a law, older than our empire itself. If a Xilari saves a human, their fates are bound." He turned fully to face Jack. "I have read it in the archives, but I never believed it. Until now." Jack crossed his arms, skeptical. "That sounds like superstition." "Perhaps," Varek admitted, "but I do not believe in coincidences." Jack let out a short laugh, shaking his head. "So what? You think some mystical force bound us together?" Varek was silent for a moment before he spoke. "I think that saving you was only the beginning." Jack swallowed hard. The words carried weight. He had spent his entire life believing in science and reason, but nothing about his situation made sense. He should have died in space. Yet here he was, alive, chased, wanted, but alive. Before Jack could respond, the ship suddenly shuddered violently. A loud alarm blared through the bridge, and one of the auxiliary officers shouted, "Captain, incoming vessels. 3 ships on our tail." Jack's stomach twisted. Already? How the hell did they track us? Varek's jaw tightened. The signal from the trader. They must have embedded a tracker on our ship before we escaped. Jack cursed under his breath. Can we outrun them? Varek's second in command, a female auxiliary named Kellis, shook her head. Not for long. The damage from the last fight has weakened our warp drive. We need to find a place to land, or we'll be sitting ducks. Varek's fingers danced over the control panel, scanning star maps. A blinking dot caught his attention. There, a rogue planet. No atmosphere, but it has underground caves. If we can reach it, we can hide. Jack glanced at the screen. The planet was small, barely habitable, and wrapped in thick layers of ice. But right now, it was their only chance. Do it, Varek commanded. Full speed. The Varian surged forward, racing toward the icy world as the enemy ships closed in behind them. Crash landing. The descent was brutal. As the Varian broke through the planet's thin atmosphere, the turbulence rattled the entire ship. Fire streaked past the viewport as the hull groaned under pressure. Jack gritted his teeth and gripped the console to steady himself. Brace for impact, Kellis shouted. The ship slammed into the frozen terrain, sliding across the icy ground like a skater losing control. Metal screeched. Sparks flew. Then, silence. Jack groaned, pushing himself up from where he had been thrown. Everyone still breathing. A chorus of groans answered him. Varek pulled himself upright, his uniform scorched, but his expression calm. Minimal damage. But we need to move. Fast. Jack's muscles ached, but he forced himself to stand. The ship's sensors crackled with static before displaying a chilling alert. Multiple heat signatures detected. Hostiles approaching. Jack swore. They tracked us anyway. Varek turned to his crew. Arm yourselves. We're not running this time. The auxiliary warriors moved swiftly, retrieving sleek energy weapons from the ship's armory. Jack hesitated. He had never fought alongside aliens before, but this was survival. Varek tossed him a pulse rifle. Try not to die. Human. Jack smirked. No promises. They stepped out into the icy wasteland, the wind howling around them. The sky above was black, void of stars, but the red glow of approaching ships cast an eerie light across the snow. Then, from the shadows, they emerged. A squadron of auxiliary assassins, their armor dark and gleaming under the crimson light. They moved in perfect formation, their eyes locked on Varek. A tall assassin stepped forward, his voice sharp as ice. Captain Varek, by order of the Auxiliary High Council, you are sentenced to death. Surrender the human, and your crew may be spared. Jack tightened his grip on the rifle. Yeah, that's not happening. Varek's expression didn't waver. You're making a mistake. The assassin tilted his head. No, you did when you saved the human. Silence hung between them. Then, chaos erupted. Blaster fire lit up the night as the battle began. The oath. Jack had never seen aliens fight before. The auxiliary moved with precision, their movements sharp and calculated. Varek fought like a predator, dodging and counterattacking with deadly accuracy. Jack, on the other hand, fought like a human, messy, unrefined, but unpredictable. He dove, rolled and fired, his instincts sharper than his training. The assassins were fast, but they weren't prepared for the sheer will of 2 warriors who refused to die. One by one, the assassins fell. But victory came with a price. Varek stumbled, blood seeping from a wound on his side. Jack rushed to his side, catching him before he collapsed. "You're not dying on me," Jack muttered. Varek coughed, a weak smirk on his lips. "I thought humans didn't believe in destiny." Jack looked at him, eyes fierce. "I don't, but I believe in keeping my damn promises." With the last of his strength, Varek grasped Jack's wrist. His silver eyes locked onto Jack's. In Silari tradition, when one saves another in battle, they are bound, Varek said, his voice trained but strong. "This is not just survival anymore, Jack Rains. This is a war." Jack tightened his grip. "Then let's win it." As the last of the assassins fell and silence returned to the frozen wasteland, the truth settled over them. They were no longer just allies. They were brothers in arms, bound by fate. And together, they would change the course of history, the warpath, and the hidden truth. The bitter cold of the rogue planet seeped into Jack Rain's bones as he and Varek staggered back into the Varin. The ship's hull was scorched from the battle, its systems groaning under the strain of repeated attacks. The air inside was thick with the metallic scent of alien blood and the acrid sting of burned circuits. Jack helped Varek to the medbay, the Silari captain's uniform stained with dark, iridescent blood. Despite the wounds, Varek's silver eyes burned with defiance. His body might have been weakened, but his spirit remained unbroken. Jack wasn't sure what kept him moving. Maybe it was adrenaline, maybe stubbornness, or maybe, just maybe, it was something deeper. An unspoken bond had formed between them, forged in the crucible of battle, and sealed with the blood of their enemies. But there were still too many unanswered questions. As the medbay's auto-healers buzzed around Varek, stitching his wounds with alien precision, Jack leaned against the wall, his mind racing. "You need to tell me what's going on," Jack said, his voice steady despite the chaos that still echoed in his mind. "Why does the Silari Empire care so much about one human? Why risk your life for me?" Varek didn't answer immediately. He stared at the ceiling, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he turned his head toward Jack. "There's more to this than you know," Varek said quietly. "More than I even understood when I first saved you." Jack frowned. "What do you mean?" Varek struggled to sit up, wincing as the auto-healer closed a deep gash along his ribs. "There's a reason the Silari fear humanity. A reason they've kept your kind isolated on the fringes of the galaxy." Jack's heart pounded. He had always known there was tension between humans and the Silari, but this felt deeper, darker. Varek continued, his voice low. "Centuries ago, long before either of our species rose to power, humans and Silari stood as allies. There was no fear, no division. We fought side by side against a common enemy, the Valkar, a species so powerful they threatened to wipe out all life in the galaxy." Jack's breath caught. He'd heard of the Valkar in whispers, old legends told by fringe scientists and conspiracy theorists. But no one believed they were real. "The Valkar were defeated," Varek said, his eyes distant, as if he could see the ancient battles play out in his mind. "But at a cost. The alliance between our species fractured. The Silari grew fearful of humanity's potential. They saw how adaptable, how resilient you were. And they realized that in time, humans could become the greatest force in the galaxy." Jack swallowed hard. "So, they decided to keep us down." Varek nodded. "Isolation. Misinformation. They kept your species from realizing its true strength." Jack's mind reeled. Everything he'd ever known about humanity's place in the galaxy was a lie. They weren't just a minor species struggling to survive in the shadow of more advanced civilizations. They were a threat that Silari Empire would do anything to contain. "But why me?" Jack asked. "I'm just a pilot. There's nothing special about me." Varek's gaze hardened. "You're wrong. There's something inside you, Jack. Something that Silari High Council fears. I don't know what it is yet, but I intend to find out." Before Jack could respond, The ship's alarm blared again, a shrill, urgent sound that sent adrenaline surging through his veins. Varek tapped into the ship's communication system. "Report." Kayla's voice crackled through the speakers. "Captain, we've intercepted a transmission from the High Council. They've placed a galactic bounty on both of you. Every bounty hunter, every mercenary, every outlaw will be after us." Jack cursed under his breath. "Great." As if things weren't bad enough. Varek's expression was grim but resolute. "Then we'll need answers before they catch us." The Forbidden Planet. With no other options, Varek set a course for a planet deep within Silari-controlled space, a place few dared to go. Zarkath. The name sent shivers through the crew. It was a planet of ancient ruins, buried secrets, and forbidden knowledge. The Exilari Empire had declared it off-limits, its surface shrouded in mystery. But Varek believed that somewhere in those ruins lay the truth about humanity's past, and Jack's importance. As the Varian approached Zarkath, the crew grew tense. The planet loomed below, a swirling mass of dark clouds and jagged mountains. Lightning cracked across the surface, illuminating ancient structures buried beneath layers of dust and decay. "This place gives me the creeps," Jack muttered as they descended into the atmosphere. Varek glanced at him. "Good. It means you're paying attention." They landed in a narrow canyon, hidden from orbital sensors. The moment the ship touched down, Jack felt it, a strange energy in the air, like the planet itself was alive and watching them. Armed and ready, Jack and Varek led a small team into the ruins. The structures were massive, built from dark stone, and covered in glowing symbols that pulsed faintly under their footsteps. The deeper they went, the heavier the air became, as if the weight of centuries pressed down on them. They reached a massive chamber at the heart of the ruins. In the center stood a pedestal, and on it, a holographic archive flickered to life as they approached. Varek stepped forward, his fingers dancing over the symbols. The hologram shifted, displaying an image of humans and Silari standing side by side, their faces resolute as they faced an unseen enemy. Jack stared in awe. "Is this real?" Varek nodded. "This is our history, the truth they tried to bury." But as the hologram played, a new figure appeared, a human with eyes that glowed like fire, standing at the head of the Alliance. The hologram labeled him as the Catalyst. Jack's heart pounded. The face was unfamiliar, but something about it felt connected, as if he was staring at a piece of himself. "What's a catalyst?" Jack asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Varek's expression darkened. "The one who awakens humanity's true potential, the one who brings balance, or chaos." Jack felt the weight of Varek's words settle over him. Could that be him? Was that why the Exilari Empire wanted him dead? Before they could explore further, the ground shook violently. The ruins trembled as an explosion rocked the canyon outside. Kellis' voice screamed through the communicator. "Captain, we've been found. The Drakari are here." Varek turned to Jack, his eyes blazing with determination. "It's time to stop running." Jack nodded, gripping his weapon tight. "Let's show them what humanity's really made of." As they sprinted back toward the surface, Jack knew one thing for certain. The galaxy had kept humanity in the shadows for too long. But now, the catalyst had awakened. The Forbidden Planet. The Varian trembled beneath their feet as Jack Rains and Varek sprinted through the dark corridors of the ancient ruins. The air was thick with dust, and the ground vibrated with distant explosions. The Drakari were here, and they weren't just hunting Jack anymore. They wanted whatever secret lay hidden within the ruins of Zarkath. As they reached the outer chambers, Varek paused, placing a hand on the cold stone wall. His silver eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. "This place, it's older than our history books claim," Varek murmured. "And more dangerous." Jack wiped sweat from his brow, glancing at the intricate symbols carved into the walls. They pulsed faintly, as if alive. The deeper they'd gone, The stronger Jack felt that strange, humming energy in his chest, like something inside the ruins was calling to him. "Dangerous how?" Jack asked, his pulse quickening. Varek's expression darkened. These ruins weren't just built to house knowledge. They were built to protect it from people like us. Before Jack could respond, a loud explosion echoed from above. Debris rained down as the ceiling cracked, sending a shockwave through the structure. Jack stumbled, catching himself against the wall. "They're breaching the entrance," Varek growled. "We don't have much time." The heart of Zarkath. They pressed forward, navigating the maze of corridors until they reached a massive circular chamber at the heart of the ruins. In the center stood an ancient obelisk, towering above them, its surface covered in glowing symbols. It pulsed with a rhythmic energy, like the heartbeat of the planet itself. Jack felt an invisible force pulling him toward it. Varek held out a hand to stop him. "Be careful. We don't know what this is." But Jack couldn't resist. As he stepped closer, the symbols on the obelisk shifted, rearranging themselves until they formed a language he could understand. English. Jack's breath caught in his throat. "To the catalyst. The past is your guide. The future is your burden." Varek's eyes widened. "It's addressing you." Jack shook his head in disbelief. "This doesn't make sense. How could they know?" Before Varek could answer, the obelisk flared to life, casting blinding light throughout the chamber. Jack instinctively raised his arm to shield his eyes, but he felt the energy coursing through him, like fire running through his veins. Visions flooded his mind, ancient battles, humans, and Silari standing together against a monstrous force. But there was more. Jack saw a figure, a human with eyes like his, standing at the forefront of the final battle. The catalyst. And then, as suddenly as it began, the light faded. Jack collapsed to his knees, gasping for breath. Varek rushed to his side, gripping his shoulder. "What did you see?" Varek demanded. Jack's heart pounded in his chest. "I saw everything. The Valkar. The Alliance. The betrayal." He looked up, meeting Varek's gaze. "I am the catalyst." Varek nodded slowly, as if he had suspected all along. "Then we have no choice. We must protect you at all costs." But before they could move, the walls of the chamber exploded inward, sending chunks of stone flying. Jack barely managed to roll aside as Drakari soldiers stormed into the room, their weapons raised and ready. At their head was a towering Drakari commander, his armor dark and jagged, his eyes glowing with malice. He pointed directly at Jack. "The human dies. Now. The battle for the truth." Blaster fire erupted, filling the chamber with smoke and light. Jack dove behind a fallen pillar, firing wildly as Varek moved with inhuman speed, taking down Drakari soldiers with precise, deadly shots. But there were too many. Jack's pulse pounded in his ears as he ducked another blast. They were pinned down, outnumbered, and outgunned. "We can't hold them off," Jack shouted over the chaos. Varek's eyes darted around the chamber, landing on the obelisk. "We don't need to." Before Jack could question him, Varek sprinted toward the obelisk, dodging blaster fire with fluid grace. He reached the base and pressed his palm against the glowing symbols. The ground trembled as the obelisk responded, sending a pulse of energy through the chamber. The Drakari paused, their eyes widening in shock as the walls themselves began to shift, closing in around them. "What the hell are you doing?" Jack shouted, his heart racing. Varek's voice was calm, but urgent. "This place is a weapon as much as it is a tomb. I'm activating its defense system." The obelisk emitted a deep, resonant hum, and the symbols on the walls flared to life. In an instant, beams of energy shot from the walls, cutting through the Drakari ranks with terrifying precision. But the Drakari commander was relentless. He charged through the chaos, his massive form unfazed by the energy blasts. He reached Varek in seconds, swinging a massive blade. Varek barely managed to block the strike, but the force of the blow sent him sprawling. Jack's instincts kicked in. Without thinking, he sprinted toward the commander, tackling him from behind. The Drakari roared in fury, flinging Jack aside like a ragdoll. Pain shot through Jack's body as he hit the ground, but he forced himself to stand. He couldn't let Varek die. Summoning every ounce of strength, Jack raised his blaster and fired directly at the obelisk. The shot hit its mark. The obelisk exploded in a blinding flash of light, sending a shockwave through the chamber. The Drakari commander was thrown back, his armor cracking under the force. Jack shielded his eyes as the energy surged around him, but instead of pain, he felt power. When the light faded, the Drakari were gone, vaporized by the obelisk's final defense. Jack stood in the silence, his breath ragged, his body trembling from the energy that still coursed through him. Varek approached, his face pale but filled with awe. "You did it." Jack shook his head, still trying to process what had just happened. "No, we did it." Varek placed a hand on Jack's shoulder. "You are more than just a pilot, Jack. You are the catalyst, the one who will awaken humanity's true potential." Jack met his gaze, the weight of the prophecy settling over him. "Then we need to finish what we started." Varek nodded. "The Xilari Empire will not stop hunting us. But we now have the truth. And with it, we have the power to change the galaxy." As they made their way back to the Varian, Jack knew one thing for certain. The war was far from over. But for the first time, he wasn't afraid. Because the catalyst had been awakened, and with Varek by his side, nothing could stop them. Not the Xilari, not the Drakari, not even destiny itself. The battle of honor. The Varian cut through the void of space, leaving the ruins of Zarkaf behind, but the echoes of what happened there clung to Jack Rains like a shadow. The images from the obelisk were burned into his mind. Visions of ancient alliances, betrayals, and a prophecy that named him the catalyst. But Jack didn't feel like any kind of savior. He felt like a man in way over his head, being hunted by the Xilari Empire, the Drakari, and every bounty hunter in the galaxy. The burden of the truth pressed down on him, but what haunted him more was the realization that he wasn't just running for his life anymore. He was running for the future of humanity. Varek stood at the helm, his silver eyes fixed on the star maps flickering across the screen. The ship was quiet, save for the hum of the engines and the occasional beep of the scanners. But beneath the calm exterior, Jack could feel the tension rising. "We can't keep running," Jack said quietly, breaking the silence. Varek didn't look at him, but his jaw tightened. "I know." Jack crossed his arms. "So what's the plan? We can't outfly them forever." Varek finally turned, his gaze sharp and unwavering. "We don't have to outfly them. We just have to outfight them." Jack's heart skipped. "You're serious?" Varek nodded. "We can't win this war hiding in the shadows. The Xilari Empire fears you, Jack. They fear what you represent. It's time we give them a reason to be afraid." Jack swallowed hard. He wasn't a soldier, he was a pilot. But Varek was right. Running wasn't enough anymore. "Then let's do it," Jack said, his voice steady. "Let's hit them where it hurts." The ambush. The plan was simple. Too simple, Jack thought. But they had no other choice. The Xilari Empire's fleet was vast and well-armed, but they had one weakness: their arrogance. They believed themselves untouchable. And Varek knew their patterns, their tactics. He had once been one of them. After all, the target was a communications relay deep in Xilari territory. It was heavily guarded, but if they could destroy it, they could cripple the Empire's ability to track them, giving them the breathing room they needed to gather allies and spread the truth about what they'd discovered on Zarkaf. But the mission was a gamble. The Xilari weren't just protecting the relay. They were using it as bait. Varek's contacts had confirmed that a Xilari assassin fleet was already en route, expecting them to take the risk. Jack adjusted his blaster holster as they prepared to land on the asteroid housing the relay. "This feels like a suicide mission." Varek's lips curled into something resembling a smile. Then let's make sure it's their suicide. The Varian descended onto the rocky surface, cloaked from the auxiliary sensors. Jack and Varek led a small team of Varek's most loyal crew members, Kalis among them, through the jagged terrain toward the relay. The structure loomed in the distance, a spire of dark metal pulsing with energy. Auxiliary soldiers patrolled the perimeter, their weapons gleaming under the artificial light. Jack crouched behind a boulder, peering through the scope of his rifle. "We're outnumbered." Varek nodded, but not outmatched. With a signal from Varek, the team moved, silent and swift. They took out the first line of guards with deadly precision, but as they neared the relay, the ground shook beneath their feet. A deafening roar echoed across the asteroid as auxiliary dropships descended from the sky, unleashing waves of elite soldiers. Jack's blood ran cold. "It's a trap." Varek's eyes blazed with determination. "Then we fight our way out." The turning point. Blaster fire lit up the darkness as the battle erupted in full force. Jack and Varek fought back to back, their movements fluid and synchronized. They weren't just allies anymore. They were brothers in arms. Jack ducked a blast from an auxiliary soldier, rolling behind cover and firing a shot that hit its mark. He glanced over at Varek, who was locked in fierce combat with a towering auxiliary warrior, their blades clashing in a shower of sparks. But no matter how hard they fought, the enemy kept coming. The auxiliary soldiers moved like a relentless tide, their numbers overwhelming. Jack's heart pounded as he realized they couldn't hold out much longer. "We need to fall back," Jack shouted over the chaos. Varek shook his head, deflecting a blow and countering with a swift strike that brought his opponent down. "There's no retreat, Jack. Not this time." Before Jack could argue, a figure stepped out of the shadows. An auxiliary assassin clad in dark armor, his eyes glowing with an eerie light. Jack recognized him immediately. Commander Thalric, the Auxiliary High Council's most feared enforcer. Thalric's gaze locked onto Varek, his voice a low growl. "You've brought shame to our people, Varek, but I will end your betrayal here." Varek raised his blade, his stance unwavering. "You fear the truth, Thalric. That's why you're here." Thalric sneered. "The only truth is that you're already dead." With a roar, Thalric lunged, and the two clashed in a flurry of motion. Jack wanted to help, but he was pinned down by enemy fire. His blaster was running low, and his body screamed with exhaustion. But he couldn't give up. Not now. Summoning the last of his strength, Jack charged through the chaos, tackling an auxiliary soldier and grabbing his fallen weapon. He turned just in time to see Thalric deliver a crushing blow to Varek, sending him sprawling to the ground. Jack's heart stopped. "Varek." Thalric raised his blade for the final strike. But Jack didn't hesitate. He fired a shot straight into Thalric's side, the blast searing through the assassin's armor. Thalric stumbled, his eyes widening in shock before he collapsed to the ground. Jack rushed to Varek's side, dropping to his knees. The auxiliary captain's breathing was shallow, his skin pale. "Stay with me," Jack whispered, his voice trembling. "Don't you dare die on me." Varek's silver eyes fluttered open, a weak smile tugging at his lips. "You've learned well, human." Jack felt tears sting his eyes. "We're not done yet. You hear me? We're not done." Varek's hand found Jack's wrist, gripping it with surprising strength. "You are the catalyst, Jack, but even catalysts need allies." Jack nodded, his heart heavy but resolute. "Then we'll finish this, together." The oath renewed. With Thalric dead and the auxiliary forces in disarray, Jack and the remaining crew managed to destroy the relay, crippling the Empire's communication network. But the cost had been high. Varek was gravely wounded, and their path forward was more dangerous than ever. As they retreated to the Varian, Jack sat beside Varek in the medbay, his thoughts racing. "You saved me," Jack whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Now it's my turn to save you." Varek's eyes fluttered open, and for the first time, Jack saw something in them he hadn't seen before. Hope. In Silari tradition, Varek said weakly, when one saves another in battle, their destinies are forever intertwined. Jack smiled, gripping Varek's hand tightly. "Then consider us bound." The journey ahead would be perilous, but Jack knew one thing for certain. They were no longer just fugitives. They were warriors, brothers, and together they would ignite a revolution that would change the galaxy forever. The battle wasn't over. It was just beginning. The unbreakable destiny. The Varan drifted silently in the vast expanse of space, its once proud hull now scared and battered from the battles it had endured. Inside the ship, Jack Rains stood at the observation deck, staring into the endless void. The stars shimmered like distant promises, but Jack knew that the galaxy wasn't full of hope. It was full of fear. Fear of what he represented. He was no longer just a pilot who had been in the wrong place at the wrong time. He was the catalyst, the key to unlocking humanity's true potential, and that terrified the Silari Empire. But Jack didn't care about ancient prophecies or alien legends. He cared about the people who had fought beside him. He cared about Varek, the alien captain who had risked everything to save him, and had nearly died because of it. Jack clenched his fists. The Exilari Empire had tried to erase the truth, to control the future, but they had underestimated one simple fact. Humanity doesn't give up. Behind him, the door hissed open, and Varek stepped onto the deck, his movements slower but steady. His wounds from the last battle had healed, but the scars, both physical and emotional, remained. Yet his silver eyes still burned with the same fierce determination that had pulled Jack from the void of space all those weeks ago. Varek stood beside Jack, staring out at the stars. "The Council won't stop, Jack. They'll send more assassins, more fleets. They fear what you represent." Jack didn't flinch. "Good. Let them fear me." Varek turned, his gaze steady. "We can't win this alone. We need allies, and we need to show the galaxy the truth." Jack nodded. "Then we take the fight to them." Varek arched an eyebrow. "You mean to the heart of the Empire?" Jack's eyes gleamed with resolve. "Exactly. We're going to the Xelari homeworld." The final gambit. The plan was insane. Suicidal, even. But it was the only way. The Xelari homeworld, Selvaris, was the most heavily fortified planet in the galaxy. Its skies were filled with defense platforms and elite warships, its surface protected by energy shields powered by ancient technology. No one in their right mind would attempt an assault on Selvaris. But Jack and Varek weren't in their right minds. They were desperate, and desperate people do the impossible. Their goal wasn't to destroy the planet. It was to broadcast the truth. The ruins of Zarkath held the secrets of the ancient alliance between humans and Xelari, the prophecy of the Catalyst, and the Empire's betrayal. If they could hack into the Xelari central communication hub and broadcast those records to the entire galaxy, they could expose the Empire's lies. But first, they had to get there. Varek gathered the remaining loyal crew members in the briefing room. Callus, his second-in-command, stood beside him, her expression grim but determined. "This mission will be our most dangerous yet," Varek said, his voice steady. "We will be outnumbered and outgunned. But if we succeed, we won't just save ourselves. We'll change the course of history." Jack stepped forward, his gaze sweeping over the crew. "We've been running from the Empire for too long. It's time we make them run from us." The crew let out a cheer, their fear replaced by a spark of hope. They were no longer fugitives. They were rebels, fighting for a future where truth and freedom could exist. Infiltration of Selvaris. The Varan approached Selvaris under the cover of a stolen Xelari stealth code, slipping past the outer defenses undetected. But as they neared the planet's surface, alarms blared through the ship. "They've detected us," Kellis shouted from the control panel. Varek cursed under his breath. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers." The ship dove toward the surface, dodging beams of energy and missile barrages. Jack gripped the edge of the console, his heart pounding as they narrowly avoided being vaporized. "Brace for impact," Varric shouted. The Varin crash-landed on the outskirts of the capital city, skidding across the ground before coming to a smoking halt. The crew scrambled to their feet, grabbing weapons and supplies. "We need to reach the central tower," Varric said, pointing to the massive spire that loomed in the distance. "That's where the communication hub is." Jack nodded, his pulse racing. "Let's finish this." The final battle. The streets of Selvaris were a battlefield. Selari soldiers swarmed the city, their weapons blazing as they tried to stop the rebels from reaching the tower. But Jack and Varric fought with the ferocity of men who had nothing left to lose. Jack moved through the chaos with deadly precision, his blaster cutting down enemies as he advanced. Varric was a whirlwind of motion beside him, his blade flashing as he carved a path through the Selari ranks. They reached the base of the tower, but the doors were sealed tight. "I'll handle this," Jack said, pulling out the holo key they had stolen from a Selari officer. He hacked into the control panel, bypassing the security protocols with a speed that surprised even him. The doors hissed open, revealing the central communication hub, a vast chamber filled with glowing consoles and towering data cores. But they weren't alone. High Commander Sarek, leader of the Selari military, stood at the center of the room, flanked by elite guards. His eyes narrowed as he saw Jack and Varric enter. "You've caused enough trouble," Sarek growled. "This ends now." Jack raised his blaster, his heart pounding. "You're right. It does." The room erupted into chaos as the final battle began. Blaster fire and energy blades clashed as Jack and Varric fought their way toward the central console. Jack's muscles burned with exhaustion, but he pushed forward, driven by the knowledge that everything was riding on this moment. Varric engaged Sarek in a fierce duel, their blades sparking with each clash. Jack reached the console, his fingers flying over the controls as he uploaded the data from Zarkaf. The room trembled as the truth was broadcast across the galaxy. Images of the ancient alliance, the prophecy of the catalyst, and the Empire's betrayal filled every screen in Selari space. The soldiers around them froze, their weapons lowering as the weight of the truth sank in. Sarek let out a roar of fury, lunging at Varric with a final, desperate strike. But Varric was faster. With a swift, decisive motion, Varric drove his blade into Sarek's chest. The High Commander collapsed, his reign of fear finally ended. The new dawn. The battle was over, but the war had only just begun. As the truth spread across the galaxy, the Selari Empire began to crumble. Rebellions ignited on countless worlds, inspired by the knowledge that they had been lied to for generations. Jack and Varric stood on the observation deck of the Varin, watching as the first rays of a new dawn broke across the horizon of Selvaris. "We did it," Jack whispered, his voice filled with awe and exhaustion. Varric nodded, his silver eyes reflecting the light of the rising sun. "This is only the beginning." Jack smiled, feeling the weight of destiny lift from his shoulders. "Then let's see where it takes us." Their journey was far from over, but they faced the future together, two warriors from different worlds, bound by an unbreakable destiny. And together, they would shape the fate of the galaxy.